Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to another episode of Cooking for the Culinarily Challenge, starring me, Daddy Bryan, not quite king of the kitchen. But today we thought we'd do something a little bit different. Now, this is a recipe I've not cooked before, so as I'm teaching you, I'm doing it for the first time, but this is another one of Jay's super awesome specialties. And they're scones with clotted cream. So now I bet many of our viewers across the pond don't know that Americans do eat scones, but we do. And we're going to show you how to make them today. So now a scone, it sounds like something that would be really complicated to make. And for those of us who don't bake, it might be. But they're really just a glorified biscuit in a lot of sense. And so there's some really common components that are true to both of them. Those components will be our flour, our sugar. We've got some baking soda here, baking powder, some salt, eggs, and heavy cream, which we don't have out here at the moment. But to make it a scone and to do something a little bit different, there needs to be some sweetness there, to which we're going to add a little bit of vanilla extract. I think the sugar content is actually a little bit higher with the scone. And we are going to do chocolate chip scones. So they're going to be really awesome, delicious. Let's get baking. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is preheat our oven. So we're going to come over here and start our oven at 400 degrees. And then make sure we've got all our little bits ready for when we actually have our scones. If you don't have really good nonstick pans, just go to the store, grab yourself some parchment paper. These are really good to bake on because you can, once you finished and your scones have dried, they'll pop right off the paper. You don't have to worry about scraping things that are stuck onto your pans. And with that all ready to go, we're going to start mixing our dry mix. Now, with most baking, you've usually got a dry mix, all your dry materials and powders that are going to be combined first, and then your wet mix, which would be your butters and creams and eggs and things. So we're going to start with the dry stuff. Now, we've got 2 cups of all-purpose sifted white flour, and then we're just going to put that right in our bowl there. Half cup white sugar. You could probably substitute other forms of sugar if you so chose. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Right on in there. Half a teaspoon baking soda. And then half a teaspoon of salt. And once all that's in there, we're going to combine all that really well with the mix. Don't be too vigorous, it'll end up looking like a Brady Bunch episode, which I have done, just to say.
Okay, what does that mean? It'll look like a Brady Bunch episode.
It means that the flour will go everywhere.
Oh,
and it'll be in your hair, and on your face, and on your clothes.
Well, I know Alice, and you're no Alice.
I know, that's what happened. So setting our dry mix aside for just a second, we're going to start working on our wet ingredients. So we have our 1 cup of heavy cream here, and we've got 2 eggs that are sort of cooling their heels.
What makes it heavy cream?
I don't know, it's full of fat. It would make me heavy too. Okay, so we are going to take 1 egg of the 2, and we're going to actually crack it into our heavy cream and mix that together, saving the second egg for later, because that's actually going to get brushed onto the top of the scones. So if I can not make a mess with this egg, right into the heavy cream. Oh no! I knew it would happen.
So is this really cooking with dummies?
No, it's why I call it Cooking for the Culinarily Challenged, because things will happen.
So am I going to get a piece of shell in my heavy cream?
In your finished scone, probably. Okay, so we're just going to mix that egg in there, and this is not going to go into the dry mix just yet, because what we're actually going to do next is get 1 stick of butter right out of the fridge so that it's nice and cold, and you're going to cut it up into about half-inch cubes, which you can kind of see we've sort of already done here for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that and break it up into our dry mix, because what we want to do is knead this butter into all this dry ingredients.
And here at the LeffewsThey house, we use our hands, but they do make tools or kitchen utensils you can use for this. But there's nothing better than me seeing Bryan get his hands dirty, so.
Okay, so apparently this butter has to be cold or it won't distribute.
Well, if it gets too soft, it doesn't need it.
Yeah, you want your dough to have some tensile. So
it makes the actual scones more fluffier. Yeah, I said fluffy.
He said fluffier. Okay, so we've been kneading away, and I say kneading, but it's really more pinching. What you're doing is you're breaking the butter down into smaller and smaller bits so that it incorporates into the flour, and it starts to take on that kind of granulated look a little bit.
Show me already.
Yeah. So what we can do next is we can toss in our chocolate chips. Now, if you're going to do fruit, be careful, because we tried this once with frozen blueberries, and once the blueberries thawed, it made the whole mix really wet and mushy.
Yeah, so use fresh blueberries.
Yeah, and be careful not to mash them up too much and get the juice.
And you just use the whole bag of chips.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to, though. We're just piggies.
Yeah.
The chocolate is better.
It's chocolate, and it's dark chocolate, too.
So it's good for you.
Yep. It's heart healthy, and it helps your brain, and it helps cure depression.
Looks great.
Yep, okay.
Okay, so what did you forget to add to the wet mix?
Oops. So apparently, I forgot to add the vanilla to the wet mix. So our wet mix is still standing by here, and we've got our pure vanilla extract.
And, ooh, your stove's ready.
It's always beeping at me. So about half a teaspoon. Doesn't have to be super precise. This is one of those things that you can add to taste.
Yeah. I actually usually 1 or 2 teaspoons for me because I like the flavor.
I do too, so I'm going to add 2. And there we go. And we're going to mix that up. That looks delicious. Alright, so now it's time to combine our wet mix and our dry mix. So we're going to just pour that right in.
Now, YouTube, if these were biscuits, you'd want to be really careful not to over stir your batter. But since it's scones, you don't mind if it's a little bit more heavy. So it's okay to really stir it in and get a good mix. So just so you know, if you're making biscuits, don't stir as much, because the more you stir it, the harder the biscuits become.
I hate this thing. It takes forever.
That's what you're supposed to. It's supposed to be a dry mix.
It takes forever.
So YouTube, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm actually the cook in the family, and I'm constantly trying to teach this good-looking man how to cook. So
he doesn't teach me how to cook. Jay is the one who enjoys the act of cooking. So he's usually the one to explore new recipes, whereas I actually make things that taste good.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so we're getting to be about cookie dough consistency
I just want to make sure when Brian drives me to an early grave that the next man he marries has some decent food from time to time.
Drives you to an early grave? We just got gas. Would you like to go now?
Huh? Okay, so it's pretty wet, so you actually need to add a little bit more flour with it in order to harden it up a little bit.
Okay. So we've got our dough to where it'll hold its shape now. And you can see if I let it go, it doesn't go. So this is where we want to see it, and now we're just patting it down. And we want to get it to where it's about a ½ inch thickness, because then we're going to take our pizza dough cutter, or any similar cutting implement, and cut it into our shapes that we are going to put on our pan and bake.
So you could almost pretend like you're making a pizza.
I'm making a pizza.
A very tasty chocolate chip pizza.
I'm making a chocolate pizza. What could it be better than that, huh?
So nice. And see how you got all the flour on the side? It kind of helps.
All our Italian YouTubers just immediately unsubscribed.
Yeah, well, they've been subscribed us for much worse than that.
Yeah.
So you're getting awful skinny there.
A little bit in some parts. Okay, that's about a ½ inch.
Okay, so it's about a ½ inch thick.
Yeah.
You can see all the yummy chocolate chips?
Yep.
And now he's ready to cut it.
Here we go. The chocolate chips are getting in the way. They get stuck in some spots. Just keep going through.
So what are your plans this weekend? Anything fun?
I get to hang out with my wonderful family. What could be more rewarding than that?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so we've gone through and we've cut them all up, and we've got our little scone shapes. They don't have to be this shape. They can be any shape you want them to be. I know a really common scone shape is just round. So we are now going to transfer them over to our baking sheet, and we want to make sure we've got that on standby. We're just going to scoop them off of our paper here. Make sure you really get underneath them. And then right there. Spread them out a little bit. If you have to do it on 2 baking sheets, do it on 2, because once they heat up, they tend to expand and they'll grow into each other if they're not far apart enough. Okay, so we've transferred our scones over to our pan, and they look yummy and delicious already, and you'd think they'd be ready for the oven, but not quite yet. Now we take our second egg, which we've beaten here, and we've got a little brush, and we're just going to brush that right on the surface, not real thick, and this will give it a nice golden brown crust on the top. And then once we've got these all brushed up, we're going to pop them in the oven, which we've preheated to 400 degrees, and bake them for about 15 to 20 minutes. Keep an eye on them. You'll know when they're done. They get nice and brown on the top. So YouTube, our scones are in the oven, and they're going to be delicious, but it's just not scones unless you have clotted cream.
Clotted cream.
Yes, yes, yes. And our UK viewers will probably know clotted cream very well.
My British heart loves the clotted cream.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway... to make actual clotted cream, though, is a process that we really can't get into. Cause
like my mama used to make?
You have to put it in the oven and actually let the cream clot. And part of that just kind of gives me the oogies. So we're going to make a really easy clotted cream that you can make at home.
American version of clotted cream?
We're going to make a really easy clotted cream that you can do. And we're actually going to do something, it's really similar to the whipped cream that we've made in the past, if you've watched that previous video. So we're going to use our heavy cream again. We've got our powdered sugar, our confectioner's sugar, and we have about half a cup of sour cream.
Which makes the clotted cream.
Which is what thickens it up and makes it clotted, yeah. So we're going to put it in our stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, which 99.9% of us don't, you can use a hand mixer, or hopefully you've got really strong arms. So here we go. In go all our wet ingredients very slowly so as not to splash them all over the kitchen.
So it's a cup and a half of heavy cream.
Thank you, voiceless narrator. Cup and a half of heavy cream. Then we have half a cup of sour cream.
And if you were making whipped cream, you would just put in vanilla extract and you'd leave the whipped cream, the sour cream out.
Right. But, you know, they can watch that video and figure that out for themselves, narrator.
And that's with your waffle video.
And then about 4 tablespoons of powdered sugar. And this is to taste, so you can add more or less, and you don't have to be exact. So we've got 1, 2, it's spraying everywhere already, 3, and 4. And we're going to pop down our...
So it's going to get really noisy, they won't be able to hear you, but you start off low, and then as it starts to set up, you go faster.
And why do we do that, voiceless narrator?
So the stuff doesn't splash everywhere. Why am I voiceless?
You're not. I don't know, it's weird. Okay, so yeah, we're going to start off slow.
Not that slow.
Until it starts to whip up.
It'll be an hour to whip that slow.
It's already starting to whip up. Okay, so our scones have finished baking, and they look nice and golden brown and delicious.
They smell awesome.
They do. They're smelling up the whole house with this delicious baking smell.
Yummy.
Okay, and right over here, YouTube, we have our clotted cream.
Our clotted cream?
He's making that.
It's basically glorified whipped cream. And Brian's putting it on like a very finicky, I don't know what he's doing.
Just goes
with whipped cream, I just throw it on there.
Top. So let's see what we've got. So good.
Yeah. The kids are going to love that when they get home from school, so it'll be a good treat for them.
No, they're not, but I'm going to eat the whole tray before they get home. But YouTube, in, let's say, just under an hour, you've made scones and clotted cream. How awesome are you?
Yeah.
The other moms at school are going to be so jealous.
Yeah. Your mom?
You know what I mean.
Okay. So bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube, and congratulations.
On what?
Making scones.
Oh.